Exercise 7A-1. We're going to calculate overtime pay, gross pay, and biweekly earnings. So Part A, calculate the total wages earned for each hourly employee, assuming an overtime rate of 1.5 over 40 hours. Complete all input fields, enter a 0 for any zero amounts, and enter amounts to the nearest cent as needed. So let's start by opening the table under A. We're going to move that up here so we can see our table, and down here towards the bottom left there is a calculator that you can use in My Accounting Lab. You can use your own, but the great thing about this one is it has this enter key which allows you to populate whatever cell you have selected with the answer once you get it in here. So for Carol Lane, our first employee, she has an hourly rate of $9.25 and she's worked 38 hours. And note that because she has worked 38 hours, that number is under 40, so all of her wages will be under regular wages for this portion. So let's go ahead and calculate that. $9.25 multiplied by 38 hours of regular time equals $351.50. So go ahead and click in the regular wages, and then you can hit the enter key in order to populate the answer there. And then as for Carol Lane's overtime wages, because it is under 40 hours worked, there will be 0. And it's very important to enter a 0 here in this field, otherwise My Accounting Lab will count your answer incorrect. So then, because we have 0 overtime wages, if we add that on there, it's also $351.50 for Carol's total wages. So we're going to go ahead and clear out the calculator here and move on to Samantha Walker. Her hourly rate is $14.85 and she has worked 42 hours, so definitely over 40 hours, which will mean we'll be calculating overtime wages here for her. So let's go ahead and start by inputting her regular wages. So we'll take $14.85, multiplied that by the first 40 hours she worked, for a total of $594. You can go ahead and click in the cell and hit the enter key here in order to populate that or manually input. And then we will need to calculate Samantha's overtime wages. So we'll go ahead and clear out and start by calculating her overtime rate. So we'll take $14.85 and multiply that by the 1.5 rate that we were given here at the beginning of the problem. For an overtime rate of $22.27.50. So notice we are not going to be rounding this calculation here when we do calculate her overtime wage. Otherwise, My Accounting Lab will count it incorrect. Generally, My Accounting Lab will tell you if calculations need to be rounded in between. Here in the green writing, that was not included. So we'll be rounding the final answer if needed. So let's take the final 2 hours of Samantha Walker's time here and multiply that rate for overtime wages of $44.55. And then we can go ahead and add regular wages to overtime wages. For a grand total wage of $638.55 for Samantha Walker. We're going to go ahead and clear out our calculator again and then move on here to Lewis Jones. The hourly rate is $19 and he has worked 52 hours, so again over 40. We will be calculating overtime wages here. So to start out, we're going to multiply $19 times the first 40 hours that he worked in order to get $760 for his regular wages here. And then for his overtime wages, he has worked 12 hours over 40. So we will start by calculating first his overtime rate. So $19 times 1.5 in order to get $28.50 as his overtime rate. And then we'll go ahead and multiply that by 12 hours that are left over for overtime wages of $342. And then we can go ahead and add his regular to his overtime wages in order to get his total wages here of 1,102. And we can go ahead and hit the enter key in order to populate that answer. And then we can go ahead and hit the check answer key here to see how we did. Fantastic. Okay, now we can move on here. So now we're going to move on to part B. So let's close out of the table from A and open up part B here. Excellent. So calculate the total biweekly earnings of these newly hired salaried employees. Enter amounts to the nearest cent as needed. So these salaried employees are paid a flat fixed rate. So what does that flat fixed rate mean? It means that they get to work overtime, however, they do not get paid for that overtime. So first here we have John Brown. He is paid $3,775 on his monthly salary. However, when we look here, they are paid bi-weekly, not monthly. So now when you get hired as a salaried person, they often will give you a monthly rate or an annual rate, but that doesn't mean you're paid monthly or paid annually. That's just what they tell you when they have the job posting or the job offer. So these people in this problem are actually being paid bi-weekly. So our first task is to figure out how many paychecks are there in a year. If they are biweekly employees are paid biweekly, that means they're paid every 2 weeks. So our first task is to figure out how many paychecks there are in a year. If they are biweekly employees, they're paid every 2 weeks. So how many paychecks are there in a year for them? We'll take 52 weeks. And then divide that by 2 to get 26 paychecks per year. So what we're going to do here with this monthly salary for John Brown is we're going to divide by the number of pay periods in a year. So what we're going to do here with this monthly salary, we're going to convert it to an annual salary and then divide by the number of pay periods in the year, which is 26. So here's how I do that for John Brown. We're going to calculate his annual salary. So we'll take $3,775 per month, multiply that by 12 to get his annual salary. So that'll be $45,300. And then we'll go ahead and divide that by 26 pay periods in a year. So then we're going to go ahead and round this up to 31 cents here, since it says to the nearest cent as needed. So we can go ahead and type that in. So 17.42 and 31 cents. Okay, so now that we have John Brown finished, we can go ahead and clear out and move on to Jane Scott here. So Jane Scott gets paid $10,475 here. So we're going to go ahead and take that amount into our calculator. Since that is monthly, we're going to multiply that by 12. And then we're going to go ahead and take this annual salary now of $125,700 and divide it by the 26 pay periods in order to get her biweekly earnings. So Looks like we're going to be rounding here again to 62 cents since we do have a long decimal. So we're going to have $4,834.62 as her biweekly pay. So there we go. We're going to check our answer, see how we did. Nice work. So pretty straightforward there. But students do get confused with converting a monthly salary sometimes to biweekly earnings, so make sure you understand that process.